because we
Yeah,
panelists
that's
can't
great.
quite see if people are joining us just yet, so we'll give them a few minutes.
Well,
Yeah.
good morning, Henry.
So,
How are you?
I'm good. Good evening from here. It's already evening.
Yes, exactly.
and how long did it take to drive from Mosul to Hawler?
Well, it's actually if you don't stop, then it's like 1 hour. But the checkpoints were crowded, so it took me 2 hours to get home. Actually, I mean to get where
That's
I am
annoying.
Home is a flexible concept.
now. Home is where my food are in.
And Henry, what were you doing in Mosul this time?
Well, I was visiting some places where Pop will visit soon. So, and how are the preparations in Mosul, in around the areas, and the churches that they are reconstructing and rebuilding the churches, the mosques, and those places.
Yeah.
So at the moment, media everywhere focusing on his visit.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm on assignment to do that.
What do you think of it? I'm curious what you think of the Pope's visit.
I mean, that would be his first time to visit Iraq, if I'm not mistaken. I think, I mean, actually today when I was in Mosul and I was actually in the old city, which is like where it's so destroyed and there's like it's underground. I mean, on the ground. And I was thinking, when Pop comes and visit Mosul, and like I was so curious how he would think about the whole scene, you know. But I couldn't get an answer, to be honest. And you know, it's I don't know, but like it's gonna be weird, you know. I mean, like I'm curious if he will expect those things, you know. I mean, when he's here in
Well, he's a very interesting Pope politically, and I expect he's seen a lot of things in South America.
yeah. So yeah,
It'll be interesting.
It is
yeah.
interesting, though, Old City in Mosul. I'm not sure there's any way to prepare to see it. The first time I saw it, there was no way to prepare. There's no way to, yeah. I think you're right, Christine. He's seen a lot. It'll be interesting to see how his previous experience have prepared him. But I also, and to have it be this way, I mean, it's now been really 5 years since the occupation was sort of the city was freed from the occupation, but it's and everyone's working so hard. Lots of great work is happening, but the old city looks still the same. Well, on that extremely cheerful note, Howard, maybe we should get started.
Yeah. Yes, let's get started. I'd like to welcome everybody who's joined us. A very warm welcome to you today. My name's Christine Robbins of the Centre for Kurdish Studies at the University of Exeter. And I am actually speaking to you from my daughter's house, which is in Todmorden, West Yorkshire. And the reason I'm telling you this is that I know many of you who are studying at AUIS have studied English literature a lot, and so it's just the next valley from where the Bronte sisters wrote their books, and I'm looking out at the wild, windswept, rainy moors at the moment. So there's a little bit of local colour for you. And I'm going to hand over to Marie.
My name is Marie Lebras. I'm the director of Kashkul, the Center for Arts and Culture at the American University of Iraq Slemani. And as usual, I am speaking to you from California, so it's quite early morning here. but I always bring my Kurdish library, so at least I have that.
That's great. Well, this isn't the first conversation that we've had on our theme of curating Kurdishness, and many of you will probably know what the theme is about. But for those of you who are joining us for the first time, the theme is called Curating Kurdishness, Art, Culture and the Archive in Kurdistan and Beyond. And what we're aiming to do with this is capture this enormous range of creativity, of making new expressions of knowledge, and of preserving older treasured knowledge that we see amongst people who are living in Kurdistan and coming from Kurdistan. So we have already talked about poetry and a little about art, and we're going to be talking more about how people curate and preserve their own precious cultural knowledge. Our guests have included and will continue to include creatives, scholars and artists of all ages from very different communities who are using different languages. Now, I'm director of the Centre for Kurdish Studies at the University of Exeter. That's actually located within the Institute of Arab and Islamic Studies, which is the UK's largest single multidisciplinary department focusing on the Middle East. The Kurdish Centre was founded in 2006, and since then, through our MA and PhD programmes, we've seen the emergence of some young scholars who've really been changing paradigms in Kurdish studies, not only Dr. Marie Labrosse, but also Dr. Argun Çakır, Dr. Alan Hassanian, and many more who have done and are still doing PhDs with us. And as from 2021, we'll be offering a brand new MA in Kurdish Studies, which will offer the chance to engage with a huge range of sources. We do have some good archival sources in Exeter. Our students will be able to develop their own research interests through guided and independent readings and through presentations, creative project work, and of course through a dissertation, which is a much more developed piece of work. We are offering a number of scholarships as well for our MA in Kurdish Studies and our other MAs too, because we also offer MAs in a wide range of other Middle East related subjects such as gender studies, international relations and politics, Gulf studies. We do offer a wide range. We do have details of all this on our website, but we know that some people may have more questions and perhaps the website aren't answering all the questions that you might have. So we'll shortly be announcing another one of our conversations, which will be specifically dedicated to the subject of the MAs at Exeter and how to apply, and for students at AUIS, how to benefit from the fee reduction that we're offering for the AUIS students. Now, on the research side, we're very busy in Exeter. I have two colleagues, Dr. Clémence Scalbet-Yücel and Dr. Ferangis Qaderi, who are very active in working on the preservation of knowledge and culture, oral history, endangered cultures, lost literatures, and also in translating Kurdish text for a non-Kurdish speaking public. And most recently, we've turned our attention to the issue of archives and decolonizing archival processes. So this idea of these conversations online came from our celebrating Kurdish culture and the possibilities for young people to follow their interests, their talents and passions into graduate studies and lifetime careers.
And all of what Christine said, it's just such a perfect fit for what we do at Kashkul. Kashkul was formed as a collaborative to support existing and emerging scholars, to make sure that local Iraqi and Kurdish scholars and translators and artists could collaborate with Western scholars, translators, and artists and get the support that they need to advance their artistic careers, to advance their scholarly careers, and to reach a broader audience, but maybe even to reach more of an audience at home in Kurdistan. Work from Kashkul has appeared all over the world in magazines and outlets such as World Literature Today, Modern Poetry and Translation, Poetry London, Words Without Borders, the Los Angeles Review of Books, and many others. But one of our proudest moments was actually when we worked with Hawra Khalid just this past year, almost 2 years ago now. And Haure is an award-winning photojournalist who's covered every major conflict of the last 10 years in the Iraq region, but also strives to document Kurdistan and Iraq beyond conflict, beyond the idea of the conflict zone. Christine, would you like to? Sorry, I was about to launch into Haure's bio, mostly because I'm just so excited Haure is with us today, and so happy to think back on the work Kashkul and Haure have done together. So, but Christine, I'll turn it over to you.
Fine, that's fine. Haure was born in Kirkuk in 1987, and after earning his degree in media at Slimani Technical Institute, he pursued a life and career as a photojournalist. So his photographs have appeared in the New York Times, the National Geographic, the Washington Post, the Sunday Times, Le Monde, Newsweek, Al Jazeera English, and many other publications. Most recently, he's begun writing about his experience. His prose poem, Hands, was published in translation in World Literature Today as part of a feature on literature from the pandemic. Khalid himself, that's Haure himself, has been a refugee on 4 distinct occasions, allowing him to understand the experience of the displaced with a particular nuance and compassion. His photography has been exhibited worldwide in the Czech Republic, Italy, Slovenia, and the United States. And during this last year, Kashkul put together an exhibition which was called Through the Smoke, Behind the Curtain. And this constituted Haure's first show in Kurdistan. So I think we'll move on and ask Haure to talk about some photographs, but also we'll be showing some photographs too. Marie, do you want to start showing the photographs now, or would you like to be talking to Haure first?
Maybe we can ask just a couple questions, and then when Haure starts referencing things, we made an exhibit booklet for Through the Smoke, Behind the Curtain. So you'll see me pull that up throughout our conversation today. When Haure references a photograph, I'll be able to scroll through the exhibition booklet and show you all the photographs that Haure is referencing.
Okay, so, well, if I get first question, I'm going to ask a classic sort of beginner question, Haure. I was going to ask you how and why you became a photographer, and perhaps you had somebody in the family. And then I read in your booklet that in fact there wasn't anybody in your family. So I'm even more curious to know: did you have an example of somebody that you wanted to imitate, or was there another reason that you decided to become a photographer?
Yes. First of all, thank you very much for having me. When I was 8 years old, around 8 to 10, I can't remember exactly. So my uncle, who's living in Netherlands, who was keep sending me, sending the family pictures of the daily life from Netherlands. And for me, it was I was surprised that there is a machine that can create pictures. And then I asked him to send me a camera, and he did it, that I could send pictures back to him. And then once I got the camera, so I started to take picture of everything around me. And then I realized that the things that I see through the viewfinder, it's actually very different than the way I see through my eyes. And I grew up with that camera until I graduated from high school. And then I thought I could use the camera to document things around me, or to document part of the history that I can. And there was too many things going on back then around me already, wars all the time, and the economy was very bad, and we were barely having food to eat. And so, for example, the whole neighborhood had only one TV, and one family had a TV. And then during the evening, we were all going to that house and watching TV. And those kind of stuff. So when I had the opportunity to study journalism, I took it, and that's how I started with studying journalism. And then in 2007, I professionally started. From the beginning, I was working for the local newspapers, and then till 2009. And then in 2009, two of my very close friend, Sebastian Mayer, who was an American photojournalist, and Cameron Najim, a Kurdish photojournalist. So they built the first and only agency which calls Metrography. And I remember Cameron asked me to join the team, and I was very happy about it. And we started building the agency. And then that's how so the first foreign photojournalist I met was Sebastian. So we start working very hard. And then slowly I learned a lot. And then in 2000, so the first picture I published internationally was, if I'm not mistaken, was beginning of 2009. It was on France 24, and I was super happy about it. I was keep telling people around me, look, my picture is on France 24. And that's how I started working on for international publications with the help of Cameron and Sebastian and the agency. And then after a while, I had to leave Kurdistan. I've got death threatened by Al Qaeda for some work I was doing. I was embedding with police, patrolling and looking for Al Qaeda members and those kind of stuff. And then I had to leave the country. So I went to Netherlands, where I started business very far from what I do now. But I lived there for like a few years. And then when the ISIS war happened, I moved back to Kurdistan, and I started working again till the moment we're talking. I mean, till this moment. And yeah, I mean, that's how I became a photographer.
I've heard you tell that story before, Hare, but it never gets old. I just love the idea that your whole career with photojournalism began with receiving pictures from somewhere you'd never been, just of life there, and wanting that impulse to show the life you saw to someone else who wasn't where you were, which is still exactly what you do. You're still trying to show the life where you are to people who aren't there. And I've always thought of all of the times you've said, you think back to when you weren't a professional photojournalist and you say, oh, I wish I had my camera then. I've heard you say that a dozen times. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, I've heard you say, I wish I had my camera then, but I also know that there have been times when it's been very difficult to hold a camera and not do more than take a picture. To let taking a picture be the action you do. And I wonder if you could talk with us about if you've ever experienced internal conflict in terms of whether to pick up the camera or to pick up a different tool, or whether to pick up or put down the camera. Sort of when are those moments when you're challenged as a photojournalist about whether or not to pick up the camera?
Yeah, well, a lot of people ask me so many times if I ever helped any people where I work, and a lot of people ask me if I ever put my camera down and actually helping those people around me, that something happening to them. And of course, sometimes you have to, there's no other options, and that happens a couple of times, and the reason is, I mean, as a photojournalist, since you are there to help those people, and it doesn't matter what kind of help is it, but still you are helping them by sharing their stories, by giving them a voice. Even though sometimes we as as journalists, I mean, at least me, I feel guilty of what I do, but that's another thing to talk about. Um, for example, once I was in Mosul during the battle, and we were so like people were stuck in their houses, and they haven't had food to eat for a couple of weeks, and they were so hungry. And then the neighborhood that the Iraqi forces liberated, and then they brought a truck of food to people, and there was in 5 minutes there was like hundred people running towards the truck. And from the beginning I didn't know what was going on, and then I realized, all right, so this truck has food, and they want to get it. And then I jumped on the truck to take pictures, and the scene I saw was like horrible. And like I never realized that they were in so much need to food. I don't know, like not only food, with all the fears around, and you know, like living under ISIS for like few years, and then finally they are liberated, but they are hungry. They didn't die because of the war, but they might die because of their hunger. And I just couldn't continue taking pictures. I put my camera down, and I jumped into my car with a friend of mine, and we came back to Erbil. And that was where I was so depressed, and I didn't go out for like 20 days. Like me and my friend, we were every night we were drinking whiskey and smoking cigarettes and sitting home. Or another time was like October 16th, 2017, when the finally ISIS war finished, and then another war was about to start between the Kurdish forces and the Iraqi forces. I was in Amsterdam to take some rest, and
All right, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is it all right if I share my screen at this point and show people the photos you're discussing?
definitely.
Thank you. Please continue. I did not mean to interrupt.
I was in Amsterdam to take some rest, and then a newspaper called me, and it was like, "Want to go back on an assignment?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm planning to go back anyways, because perhaps another war will start again, and if it starts, it will start in Kirkuk, which is my hometown, so I have to be there anyways." So I came back to Kirkuk. 3 days I was like keep traveling from Kirkuk to Dus Khurmatu and back to document the whole event before the war actually started. And then on 16th October, all of the sudden after the midnight, the Peshmerga, which is a Kurdish forces, they left their position without fighting, and it was like, which surprised everybody. And I was at the gate at the southern side, where Hashdi Shabi started attacking the city and enter the city. I mean, the reason I say Hashdi Shabi, because I saw them, you know. Otherwise, there was too many other different Iraqi forces around, but they entered from that side, and they started shooting at anyone on the street, and we all started running. And me and a friend of mine, we jumped in our car, and there was only one car behind us. That's it. And then we start driving, and all of a sudden we saw through the mirror of the car that the car behind us, something hit the car, and it just exploded. And then we were so afraid, we just turned to the right, and then we stopped, and then we looked back. We saw some people bleeding on the street, and shouting and asking for help. And then me and my friend, for 10 minutes, we were like, what should we do? What should we do? What should we do? And then we thought like, okay, if there wasn't that car, that rocket or whatever RPG, whatever was it, would hit us, and we wouldn't be living now. So we should help them. And I think I only took 3 or 4 pictures, and I put my camera down, and then we start to dragging them to a safer place where, but like, and it took us for like half an hour, and they were keep shooting at us. I can't even believe that I'm survived now, but yeah. Um, so then finally we managed to put them in a car and send them to the hospital, but unfortunately one of them didn't make it on the way. And then at that moment we didn't know that there was another person in the car burning. So and then we drove back, and I went to my family, because my parents are still living in Kirkuk. So I forced them to leave the city because we didn't know what is going to happen. So I took them to Chamchamal, which is a small town between Kirkuk and Suli. And then after a week, I guess, so I realized those people were one family, actually, a father, a son, and a brother. And I found them in Erbil in a hospital. So the son, actually, they had to cut one of his leg, and the father died, and the other person, I think he got PTSD very badly. Um, and yeah, so those moments happen all the time, but it's up to us. Either you take your camera down, I mean, you put your camera down, or you keep photographing. And I believe both are important, but it's like each at the right time, you know. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Hauray. I know this is a photo that continues to affect your life even today, and continues to affect where you can and can't go, at least safely. I know you still pretty much go everywhere you need to be. So thank you for speaking about that, and thank you for letting us share that with the viewers.
Yeah, sure.
Could we return to the title photograph of this beautiful booklet, Through the Smoke Behind the Curtain? There's obviously this idea that, well, there you can see through the curtain. Could you tell us a little bit about why you chose this title? Could you talk us through these ideas of smoke and curtains and things being hidden or things being revealed that you're referring to in that title, and obviously the photograph itself?
Yeah. Well, if I start with the photograph itself, so so that picture, I took this picture in an IDP camp, 10 minutes, 10 kilometers out of Kirkuk. So this picture was a picture of a bigger project that I did about that specific camp, and the reason was I became refugee in this place for 4 times already, and 2 of them when I was a kid. I mean, the first time happened, I was only 4 years old, and so basically, as Mari said earlier, I often think, or I often wish I had a camera, or I was a photojournalist to document those moments. But I mean, I missed it, but there's always a way to go back to those times. It's like time traveling through camera. And um, when the ISIS war happened, Kirkuk became a city that welcomed IDPs or displaced people. And I wanted to get back the pieces I missed, my childhood, for example, you know. So I decided to go to that camp and showing anything happening in the camp. So I stayed there for exactly a month, every single day, day, night. I ate with them. I slept with them. I we just like spent the whole month together. So and then when we were about to do the exhibition, me, Mari, and David, and Pishtiu and Kamal, we were all discussing about the title, about the which picture should be the title, and so we became with this title, behind the smoke, through behind the curtain, through the smoke behind the curtain. um, um, so one of the reason is like like Iraq became the center for journalists. I like almost every single journalist has visited the country at least during the ISIS war. um, but me, for example, or let's say the local journalists, I believe that we could document the event more in detail, because not because we are a better journalists, but because we know the language, we know the culture, we know the people, we know the country, we know all the details happening. And um, um, so the other medias, or let's say they were not be able to show everything, which was a lot of things were happening behind the curtain, um, uh, because they don't have time. Like they come on an assignment for like 2 weeks talking about, let's say, showing Mosul, but you can't show Mosul in 2 weeks. So that was one of the reason we became we decided about the title. And since all the pictures are about war and the conflict zone, so I, as a journalist, I had to go through the smog to get those stories. So smog for me was like a how do you say it, a therapy to use for danger, for like risking your life, or yeah. So
Yeah. And on that note, I mean, you just said to get to the story, and one of the things that struck me very much in the booklet was the contrast that is made between people who are looking for a beautiful, striking image that speaks, and the another way of approaching it, which is to make pictures which point the way towards a story which is outside the picture. This is, and I thought it was very striking that this is what your images do. Could I just look? Could we go to Marie? Could we go to the image of the clothes on the beds?
I thought that's where you're headed, but I wanted to be sure.
Yeah, it is. Because I suppose I wanted to say that very often the people who represent, when terrible things happen, the people who take a strong stance and represent what has actually happened to people in the community are mothers. And we often see not just demonstrations of mothers, but we see mothers at funerals, and very often it's mothers who will make representations to people in power or to visitors. I remember the very first time I went to Kurdistan, some of the Barzani mothers from Kuştepe were meeting the foreign journalists and, impressing upon them what had happened. And I think that this is actually the whole labor of love that the bereaved mothers go through is not really very well understood in the West, because culturally I would say there's a cultural difference there, and it's only in places where there has been this uptake of perhaps political of a political role by mothers, like for example in South America, where people have been disappeared, or the mothers groups in Turkey, Mothers for Peace, I think that's not so well understood in Europe. And I think that your photograph of perhaps we could, I've spoken rather a lot, but that's why I'm so interested in that photograph of the two beds. And perhaps you could tell us a little bit about what that photograph is of.
Yeah. So so in Basra, the protests started for because like their city were so polluted. That was one of the reasons that the protesters were protesting against. And there was like their economy became very bad, even though Basra is one of the richest city, if not in the whole Middle East or the world, at least in Iraq, and it has so much oil, but the people, the benefit not going to the people. And so I went to Basra to cover the protest, and then I think it was my third day of working there. I met a guy who told me about this story, but I never expected to be like this. And I wanted to see the parents. So he took me there, and then I entered the house, and immediately the mother took me to that room. And what I saw was, what I saw is what you see in the picture. And the mother was crying so badly, and I wasn't even clearly understand what happened from the beginning. Then she told me, so they were all they were both brothers, and the mother, like one of them killed during the protest. And then after 20 days, I guess 20 days, if I'm not mistaken, the other son died too before his engagement. And then what the mother told me was, for 6 months, she was putting their outfit on the bed, imagining they are still alive, and preparing themselves to go into university. And then during the evening, she changed the outfit, imagining that they're home, they're back from university. And so I think I stayed in that room for a very, very short time. At least, I think it was 15 minutes, because the longer I stayed, the mother, the more she cried, you know. So I decided to leave the room and sit in another room instead, and where the father was too. And then we talked for like a couple of hours, and she was like, keep repeating the story. And then the father told me that they want to move to somewhere else, because otherwise she will, like,
Yeah.
it will, worse will happen to her.
Yes.
And when I said goodbye, the mother gave me some sweet chocolates, and she told me, you should keep this. This is from my son's engagement. And it was so heartbreaking. I don't know. I didn't know what to say, to be honest. I think the whole time maybe I only said 5 sentences, and the rest I was only listening, because I didn't know what to say. And I felt so guilty, and that's what happened to them, and I'm there offering some pictures, and that's the least they need, and then I left, and yeah, it was very sad.
It's hard to know what you could offer when people are in such a situation.
Sorry.
It's hard to know what you could offer, what you could do for them that would feel like it was enough.
Exactly.
But it's yes, I find that picture very, very powerful. It's so sort of intimate. It's not just that you see the mother outside at the funeral crying in public, it's sort of right in the home, and it's about her everyday care and loss.
Yeah.
Anyway,
this also seems to be one of those stories that you find, I think of the way you found this story, Haure, with someone grabbing you basically by the elbow and saying, you have to meet this woman, you have to see this family. This is a story that should be told. That's something that happens in Arabic. That's something that happens in Kurdish. That's something that really rarely happens through interpreters, through translators. That's something where really your status as an insider storyteller, and there is, as you said, there is absolutely a place for outsider storytellers. They perform an incredible role, but I think this is one of those stories that highlights what you see differently and how you see it, even to the point where you knew to remove yourself, which is something that demonstrates you understand. I mean, I know because I happen to know you that you grew up apart from your parents as well for long stretches of time. You know the pain that this mother was going through quite intimately, and you knew to remove yourself, which is I just think a tremendous mark of your maturity and skill as a storyteller as well.
Yeah. Marie, perhaps we could move on to some of the more beautiful examples that you wanted to talk about, because we've talked a lot about the tragic things and the difficulties.
Yes.
And I know that Haure's work is about much more than that.
It is, and that's one of my favorite things. I'll stop sharing because unfortunately we haven't done an exhibition yet on Haure's work that we're about to turn to, but someday. So Haure, we have talked quite a bit about your working in conflict zones, but both Christine and I know that you put such a tremendous effort into covering the peaceful and artistic faces of Iraq. I know you photographed dancers in Baghdad, death metal bands in Kirkuk. Obviously the stories you're telling about conflict zones have great immediacy to them, but I'm interested in the immediacy and importance you place on these other types of stories, these artistic, peaceful stories, and why you care so much to tell those from Iraq.
Well, I think I have to go back for the reason I said earlier, that I mean, like, when you go outside of Iraq, I mean, just because the media are always showing the death, blood, war, and tragic pictures, or so basically journalism is about problems, I mean, most of the time. That's what our media giving us, but especially when it comes to mention Iraq, and the only two things they think about is oil, either oil or war, but this country, same like any other countries, it has beauty, and people are living, they're having fun, they do art, they have their own culture. I mean, the country is not only about war and oil and terrorism, Or so I thought it's my responsibility to show those stories at the same time. And also, there are more reasons if we go a bit deeper. I believe if I show death and blood and wars all the time, then somehow I'm normalizing the thing. You know what I mean? Like, for example, if I show you dead bodies every single day or like every week, then you get a moment when you see a dead body, it's normal. And that happened to me, and I feel very sad about it, you know? Um, just because you see it very often, then you would be careless, you know, about it. Um, so that's another reason. I'm always trying to, besides showing those sad pictures, but also showing some beauty. And also that's somehow a way to take care of myself too, you know, um, because I need to believe that I still have a place in this country or any other places. I don't know, but also people should also believe. You just give them a hope that, hey, there are still beauties around you and you can live like that, and you can see those moments. um, um, so I think that's another reason. um, what else I was about yeah, sorry, go ahead, because I forgot what I
No,
want. The,
I mean, I want to just divert off the script for a moment because I'm very curious about this death metal, really. Because I'll tell you why. When I did quite a bit of field work in Armenia, amongst Yazidis in Armenia in the sort of 2000s, mid to late 2000s, there is a photojournalist there called Onik Krikorian, who's half British and half Armenian, and he now lives in Tbilisi. And so I follow him from a distance, and he produced some nice photojournalism about the Yazidi community in Armenia. And was very interested in them, but quite a lot of his work has been about these amazing death metal communities in places like Tbilisi. So, speaking as a very kind of old and out of touch person, perhaps you can tell me what is all this? Tell me about death metal. What is it? What does it kind of mean culturally in Iraq? Death metal. How big is the death metal scene?
well, that's a very hard question.
Well, why did you decide to photograph death metal bands?
Yeah, well, so they're the whole members, they're all based in Kirkuk,
Right.
which is, again, when you mention Kirkuk, so the people think like Arab kills Kurds, Kurds kill Turkmen, Turkmen kills Christians, and all the way around, you know. And then when I heard about this band, so the members were Kurds, Arab, Christian, Turkmen, all together, trying to criticize the things around them through music, through art. And so I was like, wow, this is something happening. I mean, like it's kind of revolution for me to see this. And you know, I mean, as my parents are telling me that back in days, like, I don't know, 50 years ago maybe, or even after, I mean, like um, before I was born, let's say. Um, so Kirkuk was one of the most peaceful city in the country. and people were very educated, and it had one of the best university in Middle East, for example. And but then politics, I mean, changed the whole thing, and all the war happened, and then Saddam, and then I don't know, ISIS, Al Qaeda, whatever. So now is a city, even my friends, they are afraid to visit, you know. So and I thought I need to show this band. I thought I need to do a story about them, because that's something incredible which people are not imagining it, especially in Kirkuk. And it was also I used those pictures for a greater project that I'm working on since the first day of ISIS war that happened in Kirkuk, the first fight between Peshmerga and ISIS war in Kirkuk. So since then, I'm keep documenting every event in the city, and hopefully it will become another exhibition or a book in the future. I don't know, but it's like I needed to document everything in the city, which is my hometown, and and the history of the city is already missing, and I don't see anyone else doing it, because everyone is busy with to stay alive, or busy with their other things. But I mean, Kirkuk is a very small part of, let's say, like the whole country are missing the history, you know. I mean, either they will miss it, or it will be documented by someone who's not from here. For example, we had an Anfal campaign, which is documented either by Iranian or Turkish or Westerners, but we don't have our history. And then Halabja will happen, and then again the same thing, and then even ISIS, you know, like I would be very, very happy to see, I don't know, 50 photographers, 50 writers, 200 filmmakers to do stuff about what happened. But unfortunately, you know, like we are keep missing the history.
Well, I think what you have. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Christine.
I was just going to say, what you have is probably more than another exhibition. It is probably an archive, as you say, you know, an archive for the future. And perhaps there are, but you don't think there are people in the other towns making archives of their home places?
No. Don't get me wrong. I mean, like there are people, but what I'm saying is, there are amazing, talented people. I know that they are documenting the history everywhere, but what I mean is there are a few. I mean, I wish there was more, because we need more, you know, because everyone has different perspective. And also it's an opportunity to say this, that, for example, if I go to Mosul, then I decide what I'm going to show you, you know, but someone else decide on something else. So even if I go now to live in Mosul forever, but I'm gonna miss some stories and some moments anyways, because I cannot document everything, you know, or because I don't want, or because I don't feel it, I don't see it, you know. But we need more people to do it with different perspective. Then in this case, we have the whole image, because what I do is not the whole image, you know. It's a very small part of the image, but the big image is there, you know. We need more people. It is same like if I talk about love, if you ask me what is love, I have an opinion, but you have another opinion, which might be completely opposite, you know. But that doesn't mean I'm right or you are right, you know. I don't know if you get the idea. I mean, did you get what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I meant, you know. We need more people, obviously.
This is one of Kashkul's big, you know, in English we say drums you bang on. Like this is a drum we beat all the time at Kashkul, which is that there are so many exciting things happening in Kurdistan and Iraq. There's so much work to do. There's no shortage, so none of us need to. We collaborate because we don't feel the need to compete, because there's just so many wonderful things to do. And Hare, even what you said, I love this idea that we can study the exact same thing. We can look at the exact same thing. And because of the concept of perspective and difference in perspective, both of our perspectives still are important to that larger image, to the bigger image that no one of us can create, but that we all create together by studying something or looking at something together. I think that's a really beautiful way to think about it in terms of photography as one image versus the larger image, and each image contributing to a much larger image. And this gets back to something you said right when we started talking, that if it's all right, Christine, I'd love to return to. You mentioned that when you were a kid and you took your photographs, you realized that what you were seeing was not what was in the frame, was not what you photographed. And I wondered if you could return to that now with this idea of Christine's question of the photograph pointing to a story that's outside the frame, with what you just said about, you know, the individual image, the larger image. What did you mean when you said, as a kid, I took a photograph and what was in the photograph was not what I saw? What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, like when you look through the viewfinder, then you somehow you have a limit to what you look at, and then that helps you to pay more attention on the things you see, and you see more details in this case. But once you look at one thing through, like, within your eyes, then it's like too many things around that things that you want to look at, you know. So somehow you lose your focus. And also when you look at the things through the viewfinder, either you want it or not, you have to be responsible to take the picture, because you want to make a good picture, and that's responsibility, I believe. But if I go on I just walk on the street and I see things, which is, I'm not like this anymore, because everything I see is a picture. but like, usually, like, when you walk on the street and you see things, but you don't pay attention on them, not on everything you see, and the camera somehow teach you to be responsible to when you want to make pictures, because that picture should be good. At least you should be happy about it. So that means you need to work on it, right? So somehow, okay, so it's a tool to teach you how to see without a camera. You know what I mean? Like, the camera is a tool to teach you how to see without a camera. And because you are not only looking at things, you're also thinking, you're feeling it. So all these things comes at the same time. But I look at this pen within my eyes and no, because it does not have meaning to me. But when I look at it through the viewfinder, or at least I need to give it a meaning. That's why it's different, in my opinion.
And Christine, if I can ask a follow-up here.
All right, if I'm allowed to say that, I love that the camera is a tool for teaching us to see without the camera. I love it. It's great.
It's brilliant. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Howray, I'm remembering too another conversation we had when you were saying, you were talking about when the ISIS war came to Kirkuk, and you were talking about trying to cover the front line at that time. Things were so chaotic, things were changing so quickly. It was very unclear who was where. And you basically said, thank God I had my camera. And you said, I would have been so afraid if I didn't have my camera, but because I had my camera, I wasn't afraid. And that's always been one of my, I have like defining Howray moments in my mind. One of them is what you just said just now, which is that the camera teaches you how to see without a camera. But another one is that moment where you said, I wasn't afraid because I had my camera. And I thought back to the times where I've been in situations in Iraq where other people thought I should have been afraid, but I wasn't, because I was there as a writer. I was there as a poet. And it gave me a way of relating to people that put them outside of fear and it cast them as humans. It helped me be a human to them when we should have been national identities, or we should have been religious identities, or we should have been gender identities, other identities that would have put us at odds. And I wondered if you could talk just a little bit about that, what you meant when you said sort of, thank God I had my camera. I wasn't afraid because I had my camera.
All right. So I think I have to go back a little bit. So that night specifically, when I went to the front line, so it was like 2-3 hours before the fight started, actually. And I was still in the car, and some fighters came to me and they took my camera and they threatened me, if I don't leave, they will shoot at me. And in those moments, I was always prepared that I shouldn't discuss much because that will happen. So I said, all right, but first ask me, who am I? And I've been covering these front lines since forever. So you all know me, and I have my ID, I have everything with me. But I wasn't realizing that they already had a plan to leave their position without fighting, which I wasn't aware of it. And they thought that I'm there to discover that, to tell people, hey, they're about to leave their position without fighting, which I knew about it later. So I left the front line and I made some phone calls. But before I made the phone calls, I exactly said that to myself. I was like, this is not a moment to spend without a camera. And I was so afraid. So I made some phone calls, and then at the end, I managed to get my camera back. But then I went to another front line. So the reason I was so afraid without a camera, so photography became a thing in me that without it, somehow I'm meaningless. This is first. Secondly, I was always afraid to die, for example, by a car crash, which doesn't mean anything to me, you know. I always wanted to, if I die, I want to die for something that I believe in, you know. And also, so that kind of fear somehow saves you at the same time. For example, um, um, when you see those things through the camera, then you feel a little bit safer because you are there for a purpose, a great purpose. But without it, you know, it's like you die for what? For nothing, right? This is first. Secondly, so um, when I have the camera, then I need to stay alive to document more. So basically, a lot of people, for example, tells me that I'm so brave, but it's actually I'm not. I'm just trying to survive, because those ugliness there anyways. But I have to give it a meaning. I have to say that we need to stop this, and the only way I know how to say it is photography. And I cannot tell people because I'm so bad at talking. So maybe that's the reason I do photography. But yeah, I mean that's my language, to tell myself and people this is what is going on, and we need to stop it. I mean, somehow I don't tell people directly to stop what they do, but I'm showing them, then they decide, I mean, what they have to do. um so 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 with the camera you have pictures, right? And then I decide what I want to see with the camera. But without the camera, it's not my decision. I have to see what they show me, and which I don't want that. um and pretty much that's what I was afraid of you know I mean, there are too many things I can talk about forever, but yeah, but yeah.
Well, on this subject of talking, to be honest, I nearly fell off my chair when you said that you don't think that you talk very well. Sometimes when people are producers of visual art, they do find it difficult to talk, or they find it's hard for them to talk engagingly about their work. But I think you've talked wonderfully about it, and I've been completely enthralled by everything that you've had to say. So I don't think you need to worry. I think the fluency of your communication in words is also excellent, as well as the fluency of your visual communication. But I would like to say thank you. This is the first time we've actually met, Harry, and I've really enjoyed our conversation. It's been great. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Christine, should we end with, I'm sorry to our viewers, we've monopolized Haure this morning. But maybe Christine, we could end with a question about Haure's new work in writing.
Yes. I would like to ask you about that, Haure, about how you're developing your work by doing more writing. I was I found the piece that you wrote called Hands very moving. And so I'd like to know more about your writing plans.
Yes, for someone who says they don't communicate well in words, those were some incredibly, that language of that piece was so fresh and new and exciting and different. Really, it just clearly came from an individual's mind, a truly developed individual's mind. It was really exciting to me. So I'm really interested to hear this answer.
Well, so that piece I wrote during the beginning of COVID-19, when we were quarantined ourselves home. I mean, we forced to be quarantined. Otherwise, we as Kurds, we never listen, but like, yeah. I mean, most of the time. So we do whatever we want to do. So yeah, the government forced us to stay home. And from the beginning, I believed, I mean, this is another front line I have to face. Um, um, and it was completely different. I didn't know how to deal with it. I mean, I'm talking as a photographer. So the first week I stayed home, but the fact I had a press cut, I was allowed to go out. And I tried to go out driving around and like walking, but there was no people and it was very scary. And then I was like, I need to do something about this. So I went out, I took pictures of empty streets, empty spots, the market, like many other places. And then I realized this is not different, you know. Every photographers around the world, they do the same thing in their country or in their city. So I need to find something different. And then I wanted to take pictures inside houses, how people are spending their lives during this time. So I think I went through 3, 4 families. Then I felt so bad about myself, because like people were afraid of me, but hospitality didn't allow them to refuse me. And I felt it, and I felt like maybe I should stop, because if I'm not scared of them, but they are, you know, and they don't want to tell me directly. So I didn't finish that project either. And then I stuck home again, and I didn't know what to do. And there was no traveling between the cities either. And I was like, here I am. So writing is another way to express and to do something, you know. The first time I can't use the camera, but I can use my computer, a pen to draw it. Instead of taking a picture, I can draw a picture, but this time with words. So before I start writing, actually, I start taking pictures of myself at home. And I was so bored, so depressed. I mean, not depressed, but like I was so bored. I didn't know what to do. I needed to do something. It was the first time I stayed home for so long. And it was like cooking didn't help, listening to music didn't help, and then watching so many movies. And so I started taking pictures of myself. Um, and I wanted to use the camera in a different way, which if you have already seen the pictures with the poem, then you will understand what I'm talking about. Is so basically it was me everywhere in the room, in the house, and that's how I wanted to show the pictures, to create the pictures. And then I thought, oh, this is not enough. So I need to write about something. And COVID made us afraid of each other, which is horrible. And handshaking or hugging is very common in Kurdish society, especially, you know, like when we meet, we do handshaking for like 10 minutes, like, hey, how are you? How are you? How are you? It's like we're not convinced that you are good, so make sure that you're good. So like we keep repeating that question. So hand became something for the first time that I thought about it so deeply. It became something that's very interesting. And then I flashback my life with the event that happened, and I was trying to think about the hands. I mean, the hand is not only for handshaking, you know, it's you I mean, I photograph with my hands, you know, you write with your hands. Like pretty much everything we do is hand is has a very great position or great job, you know. So then yeah, I start writing that piece. And I wrote it for myself from the beginning. And then I remember I and Mary, we were talking, checking up on each other. And then I think I told you, Mary, that I wrote this. And then you were curious. You were like, send it. And then I sent it. And she was like, can I translate it? And I was like, well, is it that good to be translated? And then so that's the whole thing happens. That's how it happened. Yeah. And I love literature. That's why I used literature in the piece somehow. So
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's been nearly 2 years that I'm working on my book. Again, it's writing. The big part of the book is writing, including the pictures I have. It's about my experience during the ISIS war as a photographer, but also um, I'm talking about children through my childhood, talking about refugees and displaced people, again through myself, and photojournalism and war, and to make it not boring, I also talk about love in the book. Um, so so yeah, I'm trying to make something different at the end of the day, and hopefully I'll be successful.
My favorite game to play with you, Haure, is asking you which of Bakhtiar Ali is your favorite, and it's a different answer every time. Which of Sheikh Gobek's is your favorite? Different answer every time. It just depends on the day. And if you ask me, like, if you give me an answer like, oh, Last Pomegranate is my favorite, and you'd be like, have you read it? You have to read it. Why haven't you read it? Even if it's a different thing every time, even if the Bakhtiar novel is 1,000 pages, you're like, you must read it today. Don't do anything else. Stop what you're doing. Yeah, and I really do hope that you continue to work on that book. I just think it's I think the camera has absolutely taught you how to see in a way that few other people I know see. And I think we would all benefit from hearing about that in language just as much as we benefit from seeing it on the page in a photograph. So thank you.
I hope so. Thank you.
Well, I think it's probably about time that we wound up, because partly because this room isn't lit, and I realise that soon I'm going to be like a ghostly presence in the dark, or hunched over my machine, but also because I think we've probably made you very tired, Kak Haure, with all our questions. But it was really wonderful to hear your answers, and to see you talking through those images as well. I'd seen the images before, so I was very impressed with those, but it's just great to hear you talk about them too. So thank you very much for talking to us this afternoon.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure.
And thank you to all those listening as well. As usual, the recording of today's session will be available on the YouTube channels for both the Institute of Arab and Islamic Studies at Exeter and also AUIS's official YouTube channel. And again, Haure, thank you for joining us today. And just a reminder that this is exactly the kind of work that the Center for Kurdish Studies and the Institute at Exeter do so well. The interdisciplinary studies, you brought up, how do we document Halabja? And I immediately thought of Dr. Osman, who documented Halabja doing a doctorate at the Institute by hand
actually,
drawing.
he was doing a doctorate at the University of the Arts London.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I was an external supervisor for that. It was a wonderful piece of work, and maybe we should think of inviting Dr. Osman.
Yeah. But this is just the wonderful kind of interdisciplinary work that the center supports and makes so possible. 2 weeks from today, we'll talk with Bushra Kastnasani, a scholar and professor of Kurdish literature at the University of Slemani. She'll be speaking about her new book on taboo in Kurdish literature. I'm personally very excited because this overlaps with the time period that as a scholar I study most, which is the 19th century. So we'll get to hear about Bushra's new work on that. We hope to see you there. And again, thank you, Haure. Thank you to all those listening. This has just been a wonderful session. We're so grateful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
I see you 2 weeks from now.
Thank you.